Okay, thank you for watching here on YouTube Live at Blooming Light at Blooming's Tribe. If you happen to be logging in live on the original air date, it is it Wednesday? I want to say it's Wednesday. Need to look. August the 20th, 2025. Original time airing is approximately 11:13 a.m. Central Standard Time. Okay, so I'm not going to get into too many intros. I invite you to check out the homepage here as well as the links that I have and all the videos, and that'll give you the gist if you are new and you are a non-crazy motherfucker that's happening to be watching whenever you happen to log on. Okay, so we do have some clarity regarding a collective theme of messages that's been coming through regarding, you know, some of these situations. I'm glad that the clarity is here because some of the honorable feminines that resonate with the readings and have similar experiences and storylines as mine, okay, it's very convoluted, okay, which makes it even more dicey, okay, because when you have different sectors and different groups and different that's, you know, doing stuff, it can become very, bled through together and convoluted, which creates the confusion, which is a part of kind of, I feel like it's a part of the whole grand scheme of things on their side. But so the clarity did come through regarding one of the main aspects dealing with a toxic karmic femme. One of the ones that's been from the beginning of Honorable Feminine's life. Okay, from the beginning. So chances are, for most of you, this is a relative or someone that you thought of as a relative or you grew up with. Okay, for sure. Okay, so it's really regarding them and their personal obsession and how it has morphed, because it did morph. It morphed into bleeding into different areas, but you also have some other things going on that they're not necessarily connected to. But because of the fact that they are psycho, and has, been infiltrating your life to that magnitude, it's hard to tell the difference. Okay, because that's really how deep this shit has ran. Now here's your update, the clarity regarding her. You're looking at a picture and it says crazy broad. Yeah, because listen, I personally do not use that kind of language just because I think somebody is different than me. I can't speak for the reasons why everyone else use it, but I don't use it, whether it's in the readings or even in my personal life. Okay, I don't use that language just because I can't vibe with somebody, because they have maybe culture or structures or belief systems that I can't seem to understand and or agree with. Okay, I don't even use that language just because it's somebody I don't personally like per se. Just because I don't like somebody, okay, it doesn't mean that they are that. Okay, that's not how I use it. If I'm saying something like that, it's because there has been a consistent, proven, factual, actual pattern of behaviors that are harmful, toxic, and borderline, and in some cases downright criminal, illegal, and intrusive. That's when I use it. I don't use it because somebody is a little bit vain. I don't use it because somebody is a little bit arrogant and they're a little cocky. Somebody being vain arrogant or cocky doesn't necessarily mean they cray-cray. Okay? I know that. I may not like a person's personality, but just because I feel that they're vain or that they're arrogant or cocky, it's not an automatic they crazy. It's behavior. It's what's birthed, what the fruits are of all of that would determine if I would say that, okay? Now, if they're all those things and they happen to not be criminalized, not be abusive, to other people, and all that, then no, they're not crazy. They're just somebody that's obnoxious, and that's life. Okay, because they may not be breaking laws and violating people's human and civil rights and, abusing their power and, illegally and inhumanely of those that are vulnerable. You know what I'm saying? So now let's get to the message. Here's the clarity. If this person, honorable feminine, okay, if they're a relative or someone close, here's what you need to know. Chances are, when you see this video, they are in the state that you're in. Do they live there? No. Most of them, this is going to be under the guise of they're traveling for business. These, because in most of the feminist cases like myself, these obsessed siblings, mother figures, folks they grew up with, etc., are people who are in the real estate and mortgage industry or something like that, because this is what has given them the access. That's why I say that. It's what's given them the access to various things. People that are in real estate or the mortgage industry, they have access to resources, databases, and they can do, they can basically run all sorts of shit because, you got to run people's credit, get them approved for a loan. Yeah. You can, So, with that being said, that's the industry that they're in, but this is also how they violated you and your children's privacy. Okay? Now, they infiltrated. Feminine, if you did anything like me, as you have been trying to get away from abusive people for some time now. Okay? For some long time. Okay? You count up the costs, count up the losses, trying to learn your own personal growth lessons and do your own, all that. That's what you've been doing. Okay? Now, this has impacted you all in a very severe, you and your children in a severe way, because there was so much more to things than meets the eye. Long before you ever knew. Okay? So, as you did that, if you relocated from one state to another to get away from these said crazy broads, okay, they connected with, if you dealt with housing authority in whatever state that you're in, whether it was for yourself or your children or any of you, they connected with that housing authority, and they connected with whatever initial landlord that you had, okay? They connected with them. Remember, we're still talking about real estate. Real estate in the mortgage industry. This person had already been traveling the U.S. They had already been traveling back and forth to Texas or whatever state that you are in, because this is important. This is all a part of it. This is how all of this is set up. Okay, so they connected and they made deals with certain people. Okay, Now, maybe the entire housing authority is not aware or involved, but they certainly connected and exploited that. Then the first landlord that you all had, as well as the second. And that's where deals were made. Okay? So here's the thing. In the interim of those two, this is what happened. You went through all these changes and issues and stuff because they all had a role in whatever that difficulty was, on top of the natural difficulty it would have been under any circumstances. Okay? And they all really, this is a classic case of preying on, the vulnerable and banking on the vulnerable not having anybody, and banking on if these locations are isolated, okay, rural areas, okay, no man's land type shit, especially. Now, it doesn't have to be to that magnitude, but that especially kind of helps the situation on their side. So they were really banking on this being something kind of really easy to fully go through, with all of these limitations and restrictions, on top of the fact that they were all doing things to you and your children, unbeknownst to you. Okay? So here's what happened. You started working on yourself. You started process. Okay? Which meant you had to use your voice. When things happen and it didn't sit right and didn't feel right, you begin to, okay? And this is where you saw these people's mask and face come full throttle. Okay? You were not disrespectful. You never rose your voice. You never called anybody out their name. Any of that. That's not even your style. Okay? But assertive. And call it out. Now, these people, if you're a content creator like myself, they all have been stalking you and watching you this entire time. All of them. And a part of also what was creating some issues is they were getting triggered and activated because you were speaking truths about shit, even unbeknownst to you some of these times, that were relevant to some of them, and it was hitting home. And that was pissing them off. On top of the fact that they were already shiesty anyway. Okay? So that was pissing them off, okay? Then, in some of you all's cases, don't worry, we're going somewhere when y'all see this video. In some cases, depending on what it is you're doing, if you're more spiritual than religious and you happen to land in a religious town, albeit hypocritical and ain't about shit, but you land in a religious town, and that's something that was exploited as well. So it becomes like some type of a lynch mob. Okay? And then you're made out to be something that you're not, in conjunction with the fact that chances are your sibling or whoever this feminine figure is, they shapeshift. So to schmooze, with whoever it is that they wanted, to make the deal with. Okay, narcissist. And, really perpetuated, leaned into their religiosity. If that's what they could read and pick up on, and they could have even tried to wear that outfit, knowing full well they're a full-fledged, distorted witch all day, every day, since forever, bitch. Anyway, so that's in one case scenario, and then in another, like I said, they shape shift. So it's based on whomever it is. So with one, they're leaning into that. If the other is more open to some other shit, then they're going there. You see that? Because they're tapping into different things that they can have access to, but they're not involved with all of the things per se. Okay, some of them are separate. Okay, now what also began to happen, you started to see this pattern. You start pattern recognition. Some of you may be neurodivergent, okay, and you could have discovered that that's the case, because not only autistics are neurodivergent. Neurodivergence could be developed through trauma, okay, long exposures to trauma. So some of you may very well be neurodivergent, but as a result, you have a supreme pattern recognition. Supreme, okay? And you started possibly really sitting, because you're still working on yourself this entire time, even though it was chaotic, tragic, also, unjust, anything that you can think of, you still continued, okay? But you started to see the patterns of what was not sitting right about these situations. Your encounters with some of these people in these businesses, over time, and things that would happen. And that really led you to tap in even more, like, nah, there's something wrong with this. Too many things, too many things, too many fucking things. And I'm talking about from the landlord to the housing authority, from the landlords to the housing authority, to even some of the other encounters that you would have. It's almost, you start to see, like, what are they getting people to do? This is when you really picked up that you're possibly being surveillanced and stalked. Not to mention, we ain't gonna get into all that. Now, you blew things out of the water. They've been setting you up. This whole thing, they've been setting you up. It's been a trap. They call them honey traps. Okay, they've been doing all these things. Some of them would flop. But yeah, you found out, you picked it up. Some of you even got into a relationship, and they had their whole little spiel with that. It just didn't quite all the way in the end the way they had anticipated it. Because with each of these places, this plot was to get you incapacitated. Okay, because there's sociopathic energy. This person and the people that they work with like to keep up a persona. Okay, so they act like they're like really good people and givers and all these things. And so they needed this to perpetuate the narrative about you, even though they knew full well what they were doing to you and your children. So they needed to look like that you all were just, maybe had a frail immune system, and, that you're just cursed from leaving the path of the Lord, in the cases where that's the kind of story that they're leaning into, if they feel like the people were religious, or that they needed it to be that you were just unhinged, that you were toxic. Essentially, the story that they possibly perpetuated is what's true of them. Okay, but you didn't know, what I'm saying? Because what happens is, we don't know at first. When these things are happening to us, we think we're just getting sick, or, maybe we got a bug, maybe it's something in the environment, All the while, this was a combination of actual physical sabotage. Okay, not just stalking and spell work. Physical sabotage. In other words, the environment was being compromised in order to weaken you and your children. Stuff was being put in food, furniture, all sorts of things to cause you to be tired and your children to be tired and drained, and all this was happening to you. You overcame it. All their little humiliation rituals, all of the nastiness in whatever state and town you landed in. You overcame it. The blatant disrespect, the blatant intentional betrayal. The fact that they wanted y'all dead and that they were banking on either you getting sick in a hospital and someone would have to take over your kid, which is what they've been wanting their little nasty, grubby hands on to begin with. They were hoping for that, or they were hoping that you would end up getting imprisoned or in trouble, in some way due to all of these manufactured restrictions and limitations. They were hoping that you would offer yourself. They were hoping something, because there's insurance, there's money on the table, okay? This ain't just for, some kind of a radical cause. In some cases, it's a part of it, but it's money, honey, on the damn table. Insurance policies that were put out on you and your children without you knowing about it. Okay. They've been trying to figure out a way of how to get power of attorney. Okay. Insurance is poly, and because some of them stole some other shit that belongs to you and your children. Now, as you broke through all these obstacles and hardships, okay, this infuriated the housing authority and these two initial landlords and whatever people that they personally involved with that. So when you all would go from one location to the next and all these plans are not fully manifested as intended, this is why then the amp up of all the things that you kind of saw happening. Many of you started being able to take care of yourself, got a job, was able to, do the things that folks need to do. The very thing that people claim, to do the things that you needed to do to help yourself and to help, your children. This did not, because that was a problem, because that meant you were getting stronger. That meant it was going to be harder to push the narrative. It was going to be harder to get you sick. It was going to be harder to affect you in the same way when you're put in a position to care for yourself properly. Okay. So this is why every time you would attempt to, you were working, there was a lot of attacks. And this is when it seems like they amped up a whole lot of shit. Suddenly it's a whole lot of unnecessary shit. All of a sudden. To intrude. This is when people started amping up, putting poison, delivery people, from restaurants, and, weird people throwing shit at doors. And this is where all of these weirdy things started amping up. People tampering with mail and just weirdo shit. Because you would put in a complaint, you were communicating along the way because you called bullshit. And since they all were stalking you, then that means they're hearing the truth about them, and they don't like that. Because that's really what this is. And so they started doing retaliation, which is also under the RICO categories. Retaliation for one speaking up or, complaining about blase. That's a RICO charge. As well as exploiting government government resources and for their retaliatory reasons. That whatever they're blaming you for. Okay, when they're blaming you for something, in some cases, just because they need certain access to do the things that they're doing. Okay. So every time it was time for you all to relocate, from one to the next, it was always a problem, an unnecessary, unnatural, and you call it. They hated that. When you got possibly from the second to the third location, is the infuriation is building here. Because what's happening is you are showing progression. You're showing what opposite of what the claim is. Okay, because the claim is supposed to be you're weak, you're lazy, you don't want to do nothing, you're this and that, and blase, everything that they are, because the only thing that they do want to do is be a fucking crook or bitch. This guy with a briefcase. Anyway. So, this is not good for the whole deal and all motherfuckers involved, mind you. You do have some other stuff simultaneously going on by the time you get to the third location. We'll get there in a minute. Because we have a side story that's going to explain how you got on a watch list. And it may have more to do with the third location. I'll get there in a minute. So, the plans are flopping, you're thriving. Then they had to infiltrate your work because remember, they're always coming from every angle. Okay, this is not happening. We thought that this would have, fully went, whoa. So, let's go ahead and infiltrate. And start working their works. Okay, that's what they did. They were doing shit to you and your children while you were working. Yes. Those are into the weird shit. Yes. And for some of you, depending on the type of work, if you were like on the phones and stuff like that, they was doing shit then. They was exploiting that whole little shit to affect you, because you don't know. And that's a lot of the power of things, is the fact that you're not aware. And you don't, we're not gonna know just by way, like, okay, you're feeling some kind of shit. Now we're starting to pick up that, they're playing in my energy. When you start to get these weird feelings and sensations in your body for no apparent reason, it's either heavy projection or spell work, either or. Okay? So, you still was fighting like a Shazam. Y'all was still like, Urgh. And then they were still trying to create the narrative of you crazy. This is why they did what they did pertaining to the work, how they did it. They hooked up with the hoes, the witches and warlocks and wizards, incognito. You heard me accurately, nigga. You heard. They hooked up with their ass so that they can fuck with you there and then play stupid like a whole bitch. I bet you they feeling a little bit different though. Another video. It's penalties on this shit. Okay? To simultaneously to try to make you even question yourself, make you feel bad, okay, because of people's ignorance and two-dimensionalness, okay? Because that's what that is, ignorance. Nigga, you don't watch TV, nigga? Like, where you been? Okay? They ain't gonna be saying that about people's Christianity. There ain't gonna be no air quotes and no emails and typings. Anyway. So, they try really to fuck you over. They wanted to make you, the way they went about that for some of you, and you had to kind of process and deal, because you don't have a problem, unlike all of these energies that's involved with this crazy shit. You've never really had a problem with mental health or even seeking, just as a standard. Shit, living life. That ain't the deal. It's the fact that they were trying to crazy make you and make you question your reality, and simultaneously, get that to, create some kind of trail of instability. They showed their hand though. They did it to themselves. They did it to themselves. Their actions and how they went about it is why they lost. Because that made it obvious. Like, how you going, okay. And you just, boom, just like that. No, you trying to hide something. You trying to hide something. You trying to cover up something. And you're trying to preemptively, like, block. Yeah, no, that ain't how you go about that. Okay? So y'all could have won that, even though, and that still ends up somehow working in your favor. It's unfortunate. It's still unjust, because chances are you all worked hard. You worked diligent. That wasn't handed to you on no silver platter. Okay? It was your energy, your effort, your dedication that was involved. Okay? And some of you were being promoted. Oh my God, that certainly can't be. Oh, we gotta really haters unite. All the skanks and haters who say ho, ho, they rose up. That's classic though. And you knew it. You felt it. Once again, that pattern recognition started kicking in full throttle. They were hoping that then, okay, so surely this is gonna be where maybe we can get them back into the kind of energy that we need them in, so that we can, keep them bound here and limited and struggling. No, you just adjusted, because that's something that you've learned over the last several years, is anything goes. So stay on your toes. Anything goes at any now moment. So you adjust. And that's what you did. And you continue to work on your energy, and you continue to work, with your children and stuff like that, which it actually accelerated because it pissed you off. And it really accelerated some things there. Now, when you all, feminine, you got to whatever third location you all ended up getting to, your children, this is where, it's convoluted, because you always have people watching you. If you're a content creator, that's a part of the issue. It's spreading like wildfire. People pretend, they don't acknowledge that they're looking at you, okay? But they all are. And some of these people are growing a dislike because of it, because they're getting activated and triggered unbeknownst to you. Okay, you see that? And then others of you, then there's the linkage to the exes. Whoever you ended up dating, if you dated someone, is the linkage there, as well as the linkage to the housing authority and any of these landlords. Because some of these places you all landed, these small towns, everybody knows everybody. It's unfortunate. It's like one big high school, but for adults. Everybody knows everybody. And how that plays out, not everybody's character, mental maturations and all of that, not everybody has that. Just because they have these positions doesn't mean that they're that maturity. So for some of you, what happened is you got, good gracious God, man, competitors that you didn't even know, because you're not watching these people. They're watching you. You didn't even know, because you don't care. You don't care. Oh, you wish people knew that you didn't care. Okay? So you have that. So people are side-eyeing you, sizing you up, and wanting to get into a one-sided fight. You're like, I don't even know you. And I don't care. Okay? So then it becomes that. Okay? On top of whoever your ex, if they've been all, man. If they was a handler in this whole spiel, okay? And all the people, meaning their family, their lovers, and exes. So by the time you get to the third place, you have all of that there. And in fact, it may have very well been choreographed with one of the staff members of the third. And between them, housing authority, and the second location. You discover this later. You get there, whoa. You pre-plan, you're always thinking ahead. So long before that third location came around, y'all were already, and that's wisdom though. You were already connecting and planning. You knew exactly what you were doing and why you had to do it that way. The idea was to get, if it was your children, depending on y'all's situation, if it's like mine, then it's your children, your adult child, whatever the case, what's going to be most beneficial for them, but that's going to provide access. Because that's something that had been way limited and restricted for you. So you needed to be able to be on your feet. You needed to be able to walk. You needed to be able to get to whatever connection that you had managed to keep from the Walking Dead and the children of the corn. Okay? Because you already discovered you were being stalked and watched. Because you knew that, okay, I got, you had all these factors. You started your life over from scratch. This affects you because you don't come with the whole same profile that you would normally be able to otherwise use to go and rebuild your life. You're basically in your own self-made witness protection program. So you knew, like, okay, they need to be here. I need to be able to sneak in and out. I need to be able to get to my child, whoever it is, readily. That's not going to take 45 fucking minutes one way. I need to be able to do that. I need it to be boom, nigga. I need all this shit to be readily available. And whatever connects you had managed to get, albeit possibly nothing but just to lay your head down to sleep. Some of you may be on the brinks of losing even that altogether. I mean, altogether. If you had one, if you had two, whatever your situation was where you can still stay close to your child, one of them got compromised and you may be, on the brinks of the due to follow. Listen, due to this incessant intrusion, people don't want no mess, no shade, any folks that ain't involved in shit, I should say. Okay, they folks trying to be out here, they don't want no problems. People don't want no problems. Fall on their hump. Weirdos and weirdo shit. Okay? And we don't blame them, collective. But that puts you in an imposition, doesn't it? So you're creative, if you're anything like me. Get you a 24-hour membership. There's many, many ways in order to handle that properly, considering your situation, based on the options that you have available. Okay? So now you still knocking it out the park. You're still feeding your creative passions. You're doing all of these things. People are getting more mad. Okay, because again, they've been stalking you. They've been watching you. So they're getting mad because truth is being spoken. So it's a bittersweet with the stalking. Okay? Now, unbeknownst to you, feminine. Remember how I said how convoluted this is? You got the side of the family member that connected with the housing authority and connected with the first two landlords, okay? And that family member is in the real estate and mortgage industry, and they do travel the U.S., okay? Now, but as you got to the third place, one of the staff members could have, now just follow, they could have very well had a connection to the housing authority as well. Now just wait for it. Okay? Whoa. As well as now, one of your exes and the staff member could have very well had their own offspring in that same complex. And that offspring, one of their offspring, possibly one of their offsprings, has some connections with your ex on some level, possibly. And one of their offsprings is a cop. Now remember how I said it's a strong possibility that you being put onto a watch list illegally happened at the third place. The watch list type of stuff, because there's such a thing, but it's in certain arenas. There's certain people who have the access to do that, okay? Not everybody has got that kind of access. Yes, there's fusion centers, and you know, this is where you discover, and it morphs into how you figure out, okay, oh, that's how they fund it, and so why, you know, how it became so big. But just the aspect, the fact that somebody ended up, this is what happened. There was a motivation for this. First and foremost, they possibly already did not like you, okay, due to whatever is different about you, especially if it's religion, you know, type shit, okay? So, they already didn't like you based on that, okay? Now, on top of, follow, if their offspring, any of them, was connected to your ex, okay? And whatever all that's about, and whatever that, you know what I'm saying? Because sometimes that's what it is. So it kind of already started with a nasty little undertone. Don't even know who the fuck you are, but it already started with that, just based on those things. So, you know how there are people, you know, this is just the way of life. There are people who, they're entitled, and what I mean by entitlement is, you know, they get into certain arenas and certain positions, and they have a certain view and belief that they have a right. They like to have strictness as it pertains to others, but they believe that they have a right based on what their belief systems are and what they feel like their hunches are and all of those things, to bypass the very stuff that they really want to push on you and everybody else. So they didn't like this, maybe this independent way, or also even the way of you, because again, you're still somebody that's going to assert. You're not mean, You're not cruel. You don't call people out their names. You haven't yelled or raised your voice at none of these people. Not once. Not once. Mm-hmm. But the fact that you are okay and that you're not maybe going to kiss ass and that you may very well be mysterious. Some of you discover that you go to certain places and people are just downright nosy. They nosy. They are. And they didn't like that. And so then they started to, whoever connections they had within that said complex, they started then, you know, going around recruiting all these people. To illegally surveillance you because they nosy. And they have personal issue with you. You ain't bothering them. You don't know them. Chances are y'all try not even deal with folk best you can. Because you just don't feel like dealing with it. Some of these people may be in on with the fusion center and they may be, you know, being offered things. Some of them not. It just depends on what group they're a part of. Now, here's where it's getting interesting. It may have come out that this employee at that location did something like that or something, maybe not so much the part of initiating getting you on a watch list, but something that created a concern for the owners. And then when it came up and was brought to the owners and brought to the management, and then so the management and the owners, you know, had to do some kind of negotiating and processing and then presenting to this person, and they did what the best they could with the situation, trying to damage control it. And see, this is all unbeknownst to you though. Remember, you don't know nothing about none of this. I mean, nothing. And whatever happens there, this person could have very well been offered, you know, I don't know what they call it nowadays, but it used to be something like where they don't fire you because, you know, maybe you're like, you were a good worker, or, you know, maybe you were there for a certain amount of time, whatever the case may be, or they just don't want to make it difficult for you. And so they'll call it, you know, because if you leave and it's fired, then it's like, it's hard, right? So it's like, okay, severance, you know, give you some severance, and you know, they'll call it, you know, voluntary or something like that, resignation. And unbeknownst to you, you guys out there, I almost guarantee they blame you. It's something that I've learned, that most of your abusers, people who are violating you in some way, they're oblivious to their own behavior, but when something happens to them, it's your fault. Yep. It's your fault. And so what could have happened very well is then you were put on a watch list, or, you know, then that's when it amped up because they started, you know, What the hell you have to do with that? I've seen this, I've noticed, and I've accepted that, people can fine tooth comb you up and down, left and right, and all around, but they cannot do that to themselves. They can say what your motives is and what your intentions are and what you're up to and whoop-de-woo and you're da-da-da, but they can't evaluate their own conduct. They can't see it for what it is. They can't see when they're crossing lines themselves. Because it's a fine line between leadership and authority, abuse of power and resources, and crossing civil and human rights and privacies and all that. It's a very fine line. Where, our agendas start to bleed in those things, they're not aware. So you got jilted lovers, feminine. Here you go. But at least now you have some kind of clarity, separation. Yes, this is being done on a macro scale. Yes, fusion centers are involved. Yes, you were put on a watch list. Yes, it's bigger than, just your crazy broad sister, aunt, whoever this other, the person is, okay? But that's possibly because maybe you've noticed as you're doing your pattern recognition, when all the various shifts takes place, right? Paying attention to when shifts take place. Okay, when did people start acting strange? When did all of a sudden motherfuckers start doing acrobatics? When did all of a sudden, you know what I'm saying? Because remember, people are blaming you. And as far as they're concerned, you just swallow it good and plenty, collective. I've been studying this stuff and I'm going to continue to study it. Carl Jung and other, psychologists, psychiatrists, and philosophers and stuff out there. Listen. It don't matter. As far as it's real to them. You can sit up wherever you are, fem, and trust. I understand. I understand. I got you. I hear you. You can sit there and be like, I ain't did nothing to these people. Shaking your head. I ain't did nothing to these people. These people came for me. These people, they all came for me. They all came for me. And that's just, it's the way it is, And a lot of this is to, if you want to know, maybe some of the point of the strategy is keep you in a Five of Pentacles, keep you in a negative headspace. Yep. Because if you stay in a negative headspace, then it's more challenging to be tapped into your own internal, higher guidance system to do your co-creations and manifestation, because they're hoping that it ain't gonna work now. I can tell you right now, it's done. You done save food and shit. Some of y'all possibly looking for what you call them things. You put it in there and you put the you can. It's not freeze dried, but it's like you put in the bag and you put the pushy thing on it and it sucks it. You know how they do for evidence, so that if tested. Because these motherfuckers have been trying to poison you. This shit then went to bioweaponry. Because these people are, some of these people are loose upstairs. They loose. And they'll sit up there and do that and then come in your face and talk about bless you and God bless you. Knowing full well they hand you something with a little sprinkle. Knowing full well. That's how you know that lights on and everybody not home. You're on full deck. In full deck. Because they'll do that shit. Put some cold shit in your shit. Put some poison bitch, some shit. Some shit that ain't supposed to be out. And still be talking about bless God. They will hand that shit to you. They be like, bless God. That's how you know it's like, good gravy. They not in there. They not. Y'all got a strong RICO case. A strong one. Yeah, you do. Plenty of predicate acts. Provable. Strong. This is where I'm going to leave it with this message. Many of you are being given strategy in terms of your sovereignty of your energy as to not be, to take it away from them. Because you already know what they're all doing at this point. There's no more mystery. There's no more mystery. Most of them made themselves obvious, actually. And in terms of even with police, I mean, what I can say with that is all that can just simply serve as when you're gonna file. Because some of the stuff you already know how this goes, right? The games. Oh, I suggest you file a noise complaint. Right. As if this is just a standard, normal situation. But you know how this serves you? See, this is why I'm looking at it in a higher light, because it still serves you, believe it or not. Because the whole thing was to really make you doubt yourself, if possible, to make you feel like you were crazy. To make you go crazy, to make you feel like you were crazy, to make you feel like you were tripping, to make you feel like you were imagining things, or, paranoid. But the fact that they continue to do things in a certain manner, with the pattern recognition, it is proving and solidifying to you that you are 100% on the money. Because look, for an example, if you go, okay, I don't really see the point of it, but very well. Following instructions and suggestions given. This was supposed to make you kind of also feel intimidated and make you feel like you were going to have to be forced into some kind of interrogation, but you're too smart for that. You know what your rights are, and you also know how to keep things on topic. And you can smell a mile away when people are trying to dig for information that's not even relevant to what you're talking about. It was supposed to keep you in like fear and anxiety, and like it's something that they are hoping with that. But for you, that's not what ends up happening. It solidifies what you know. You go, okay. And a nice copper, you know. Okay. Well, of course. You know, you may not know all the ins and outs, like what's the normal standard protocol? Are they supposed to go to those people and say, hey, we have a complaint? What do you say? Or is that what they're supposed to do? Or is that something that's optional if they can hear anything? But the fact, see, in these cases where you all are experiencing like the disruptors, I call it the assigned disruptors. And in some of you cases, it can be just the vengeance stuff, the ex, the jilted person that's blaming you that they don't have the job, whatever. Their offspring or whoever. Okay? And they're like, ooh, we're gonna drive them out of there. Now, that don't sound too sound, do it? I talk this way because, again, people talk a lot about, you see this statement, crazy broad here, but there's a lot of people that's talking like that, and they're the ones that's conducting as such. Just because they perceive something to be your fault doesn't mean it is. So it works, okay? It works in your favor. Because if the disruption suddenly seemed to stop the moment the cop get on the scene, that's kind of a tell. It's obvious. You don't even got to be Einstein, yo. You ain't gotta be Einstein or rocket science to figure that shit out. Hello, it's thunder and noise, and then the cops show on the premises is you can hear a needle drop. That means, as you suspected, there's the network of communication within the complex. Or, you know, because again, I know that some of y'all's phones and stuff and shits is tapped due to, you know, the fusion centers and all that. But even when that's not necessarily being accessed, the fact that there are several in a complex that's basically around the clock, they know what's going on. And so soon as a motherfucker pull in, they're texting, you know, a cop is going towards building 6. And then that alerts the people towards building 6 and building 7 to peep out their windows, peep out their, patios, their balconies and shit like that. Suddenly go take out the trash, all of those things. Go walk the dog. And so they can text the person that's, whoever it is above the unit, so that they can, for all intensive purposes, while the cop is there, and that's supposed to drive you bonkers. That's supposed to make you feel frustrated. And then, as I even told the cop, I'm like, dude, I already know how this is going to go. They going to get right back to it when you gone. And they did. Which is what proved my own theory. Because how did they know? I'm just saying, for just and giggles, how did they know? Anyway, so I got to get going here at 12:24. I hope that you all are able to start your day with a smile. The last video that I did, which was really good about words, it was cut in half. And I don't really know why. The live video went about close to 2 hours. And it was some good shiznit. So that's kind of interesting to me with that. So I got to look into why that one, if you were not live on it and you try to go back, it's kind of like cut in half. So I'll look into that and keep y'all updated about that. But at the end of it, I was just simply saying, there was some advice and guidance that it came out and stuff to kind of like help and stuff I forgot about. And how we can have sovereignty over our energy and not feel subjected to these psychic links and parasites and all of the stuff that's being projected constantly. So we can stay more in our energy and more on what we're trying to focus on. And I know that's a challenge, but it was starting your day with a smile. And many years ago, I had found this meditation practice. And you basically, you're in a quiet space and you're smiling. You can sit with your eyes closed, like really like a smile. You can be trying to even think of things to smile about, but you're smiling, okay? And studies show that our subconscious, the brain, doesn't know, it's sending a signal that you're okay or that you're happy. It doesn't know how to differentiate and go, oh, they're not really happy. That's just something that it's something with the smile. Look into it, study it. So, which makes sense why they always want you grumpy, huh? Starting to all make sense. So starting a day like that, loving on yourself, and I think the other thing was learning to see things from another perspective is something that will lighten all of us up if we would, because some of the reasons why these people are like this is because that's not what they're doing. And they want to basically pull us from what we're working on and trying to cultivate down to their level and in their vibe and in their energy. Okay? And so work with that. Be creative. I'm certainly open to things okay, as we navigate these murky waters. But if you find out this sibling, wherever they are in your state, you might have to, because I don't know if they're coming near the premises where y'all are at yet, because that'll be risque. That'll be very, very risque for them. Okay, maybe they're sending people here or where you are on their behalf. Okay, but you might need to alert the authorities and some of you, the integral authorities are aware of this person's movement and they don't know that. because they're just in the background. So they know that this person traveled. They know what they do for work, but they also know whatever weird obsession and connection they got going towards you. Okay, so they watching them and the people they fucking with in whatever state you in. This is about to get interesting.